Hey guys, Mike here from Lunch Money Comics, and today I have for you a comic book community tag video. I have been tagged by Allan, the comic collector geek, to show off my top 10 Bronze Age books. How do you define your top 10 books? Well, it could be anything. It could be your favorite books, your most expensive books, your biggest keys, just cool covers that you really like. And honestly, guys, I love Bronze Age books. I have tons of them. It was really hard for me to come up with the list. So I have a little bit of all of those things. Books that are pricey, books that are not, books with great covers, and ones I just felt like showing on the channel, and I might have gone over more than 10. The other thing sort of up in the air is, what is the Bronze Age? Usually it's defined as from 1970 to somewhere in the early 80s, usually around like 1984. But it's up to interpretation, sort of confusing the matters more. Allan put hashtag 70s comics in his video, the implication being that the Bronze Age is the 70s. And to that end, I tried sticking as close to the 70s as possible. I snuck into the early 80s a few times, but that's okay. So the way these challenges work is I show off my books, and then I tag 3 other comic book YouTubers to do the same. So the first person I'm going to tag is Jim from Bronzeville Comics. Jim has been doing great YouTube content for years, and he has an incredible collection. And as his name implies, he specializes in Bronze Age books. He has an awesome Bronze Age collection. Jim, I can't wait to see how you curate that down to 10 books. The second person I'm going to tag is Mike the Spider Slayer at Comic Corner 2.0. Mike tagged me earlier this year in a video to show off my top 5 favorite covers. I'm returning the favor. Mike, show me your top 10 favorite Bronze Age books. And my last tag is going to be for my friends JP and Rohan at the Absolute Game of Nerds, a criminally underrated YouTube channel. I know these guys really well. They're friends of mine, and I know their collections pretty well. So I'm very curious how they're going to curate that down to 10 books. They can either do them separate or together. I'll leave it up to you guys. So I want to thank Allan, the comic collector geek, for thinking of me and tagging me in this video. But I also have to mention that Allan himself has been nominated as a finalist in the Comic Book Creator Awards for having the best unboxing videos for a channel under 5,000 subscriptions. And guys, he has fantastic unboxings of great Golden Age books. He has a Golden Age collection second to none. If you guys haven't voted for your finalists yet in these awards, I'll put a link down in my description to the ballot. Head on down there, vote for your favorite YouTube finalists, and throw a vote to Allan. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. I'm also going to take this chance to mention another hashtag that's been created in our community, the hashtag comic book shoutout, created by Brian, aka Bigby McFly, the comic book guy. He created this hashtag as a way for YouTubers to call out other comic book YouTubers that maybe are lesser known and could certainly deserve more attention and more publicity. And I'm going to use that hashtag right now to call out all of those channels that I tagged. And also, I have to mention that for this great community building event that Brian came up with, he's also been nominated as a finalist for Best Collaborative Event. So while you're down there voting for Allan, throw another vote towards Brian. It's been a great event, brought a lot of attention to some great YouTube channels. So before I show you my Bronze Age books, guys, if you like this stuff and want to support the channel, head on down, like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram under Lunch Money Comics IG. Now let me show you my top 10, 11, 12, 13-ish favorite Bronze Age comics. So first, I want to show off a few books that didn't quite make the cut for various reasons. These first 2, because my good friend Brandon at M.O.N Comics put them high on his list, but they were still good enough, and I liked them enough. They were worth showing real quickly, even if they're not in my top 10. First one is this. This is the Man-Thing, #1 from 1973. Awesome Frank Bruner cover showing Man-Thing in his first ongoing series. I love these monster comics from the 70s. I love Swamp Monsters. More on that a little bit later. And I've always loved the look of this book. Brandon put it as his #1, and I don't blame him, but it's worth showing off again in the challenge. Same sort of deal with this one. This is the Demon #1. Awesome Jack Kirby creation from the early 70s. And yeah, it's the first appearance of this character, Etrigan the Demon. Now, I love these darker DC characters. He certainly fits the bill. But also, I wanted this on my list because I don't have enough DC representation. Still, didn't quite make the top 10, but totally worth showing off. I think Brandon also had this on his list. This last one, though, didn't quite make the list because not only is it from the 80s, but it's also not really a comic book, at least not a traditional one. And it's this. This is Bizarre Adventures #27. It is a Marvel magazine of black and white art. But the cover is a painted cover done by Paul Gulacy showing 3 prominent X-Men. You have Jean Grey in her Phoenix costume, Iceman, and my personal favorite, Nightcrawler. I often say I judge an artist on how well they do Nightcrawler, and I definitely like how he looks here. Another interesting thing I want to point out, you can see through Iceman's leg. Back then, he was just a character that could cover himself in ice. It wasn't established until decades later, like the early 2000s, that he could actually turn into ice. So I know it's probably just a mistake, but you could say it's a little ahead of its time. Yeah, I want to show this one off because a lot of people don't know about this. It's not that expensive, and I just want to bring attention to it, and I thought it was definitely worth showing off on the channel. I just needed an excuse. So pretty cool right there. So let's get into my top 10 proper. I had a hard time coming up with this list, and I really tried not to put all X-Men because, guys, I love the X-Men. I have tons of Bronze Age X-Men books. I could have easily made this like a top 25 Bronze Age X-Men list. I tried really hard not to do it. I couldn't quite get away from it. There's a lot of X-Men books in here. I apologize, but this first one absolutely makes a list because it just screams the 1970s like no other. And here it is. This is the Uncanny X-Men number 130 from 1979. And of course, this is the first appearance of Dazzler in her Disco Queen costume. Nothing screams the 1970s more than disco. You see this awesome trade dress with the stage lights. Now, this is also part 2 of the Dark Phoenix saga. All the other covers were done by John Byrne, but this one was done by John Romita Jr., who's not an artist I really love, but I think this is absolutely one of his best covers. I think it was inked by Terry Austin, who makes everyone look good, but I think this is one of JRJR's better works. Very cool comic book. It's a dark comic. You see it a lot of times in very poor condition. It shows color breaks easily. This is a really high grade one. I absolutely love this. I love my first appearances of X-Men. And guys, obviously top 10 because of the disco theme. Absolutely awesome book. Couldn't get away from X-Men related characters either, guys. Here we have this. This is Ms. Marvel, number 18 in my number 9 spot. This is also one written by Chris Claremont, cover art by Dave Cockrum. But this is also the first appearance of the character of Mystique. Longtime X-Men villain, X-Men affiliated character, very interesting, femme fatale, one of the best female supervillains, I think, in all the comics. But she also has a lot of character development and pathos, and she's historically significant in that she's one of the first characters shown to have a female relationship with the character of Destiny, which was way ahead of its time. So, yeah, I think she's an awesome character. I had to put this in my list because it's such a cool and interesting book. In the number 8 spot, we have another first appearance of an X-Men villain, a book I showed recently on my channel, Iron Fist number 14 from 1977, another Chris Claremont written book, John Byrne art, Dave Cockrum cover again. There'll be a theme here for a little while. And yeah, this is the first appearance, of course, of Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth, longtime X-Men and Wolverine villain. I also like Iron Fist. I think this is a fantastic book. I talked about it recently on my channel. I got a great deal for this on eBay. Very cool. Very happy to add it to my collection. And I have one more X-Men book in this sort of bottom half, and it's a big one. This is the Uncanny X-Men number 94 from 1975. And not only is this the first ongoing series to feature the new team, it's also the first original new X-Men story in like 5 years. They were doing reprints for 5 years until X-Men, Giant Size X-Men number 1 introduced the new team. And then you have the new ongoing series starting at 94, written by Chris Claremont, the first issue of his 17-year run. I am almost done with my Chris Claremont run. This is by far the most expensive book in that run, and a very historically significant one as well. I got this at a comic book show earlier this year, and man, am I happy to get this one out of the way in my run. So, that was the first 4 of my top 10. My last 6 are all on the shelf behind me, so you're going to see some bare spots open up. Give me 1 second. I do not like how that looks, but if you were paying attention, you probably know which books I'm going to show to you. So this one I did sneak into the early 80s, but it is such an awesome comic book. I love it so much. Absolutely has to make my list. Here it is. This is Daredevil number 168 from 1981. Art and story by Frank Miller, along with Klaus Janson, longtime collaborator with Frank Miller. And of course, this is the first appearance of the character of Elektra. The Frank Miller Daredevil run, I absolutely love it. It's historically significant, and Elektra is a very cool character. Originally, she was supposed to have a very quick story arc where she comes back into Daredevil's life and then dies, which she did, but of course she was revived and has gone on to become a mainstay in Marvel comic stories for years to come. Yeah, I mean, it's early 80s, but it's definitely Bronze Age, guys. I love this book. I got it for a great price earlier this year. Very happy to put it on my top 10. I mentioned I like swamp monsters. Well, here's the other big swamp monster, arguably bigger than Man-Thing. Oh, certainly is. Here we have Swamp Thing #1 from 1972. I recently talked about this book on my channel. This is the first appearance of the Alec Holland Swamp Thing. Even though House of Secrets '92 was the first appearance of a Swamp Thing, this is the first time we get the Alec Holland Swamp Thing, the one that everyone knows and loves from DC Comics continuity. I love the fact it's the first appearance, but I love the cover even more. This is a Bernie Wrightson cover, and I just love the fact that you can't see Swamp Thing's face. You have to just look at these people who are staring at him and use your imagination. I absolutely love that concept. Also, the purple trade dress, just the way that the letters match the Swamp Thing. It's just a really great looking comic book. However, this is not my favorite Bernie Wrightson Swamp Thing book of all time. It's actually this next one I'm going to show you. It is this. This is Swamp Thing #9, another, of course, Bernie Wrightson cover. But man, might be my favorite cover of the entire 1970s. We see this time Swamp Thing facing the audience. You see him in his full glory. The green up here matches the green of Swamp Thing. The trade dress right here looks like the sunset behind the bayou trees. Just absolutely fantastic. It's a great sort of counterpoint to this one. It complements it. It's as if he just turned around, right? He's facing the away from you, turns around. This could be the same exact swamp. Awesome looking. I love this book. I've always loved this cover. And because of that, I have to put this on my list. I guess I'll call them, where are we at? 5? I guess we'll call them like 5A and 5B. I can't choose which one makes my list. So I'm going to put them in there as a package group. Kind of a cheat, but hey, who cares? I can make up my own rules. Awesome right there. And then the last one, maybe you were paying attention and know it was the one right next to the Daredevil. It's this. This is Nova #1 from 1976. And of course, this is the first appearance of Richard Rider, aka this Boston accent sneaking out right there. Richard Rider as Nova. Nova is a very cool cosmic related character, very powerful, but I like that he's sort of like an everyday man with all these amazing powers. Of course, he's part of the Nova Corps, which I've heard people describe as kind of like the Green Lantern Corps. Not really, but I think he's a great cosmic related character. He's been in lots of Marvel stories since his debut. There's a new Nova as well right now, Sam Alexander. But this is, in fact, his first appearance. I got this comic book at a comic book store. Thought it looked really, really good. Gave it to my buddy Jeff at Comic Spa and submitted it in my first ever CGC submission. And it came back a 9.6, guys. And I was pretty excited about that, to get that in my first submission. So a pretty awesome book. Complete surprise it came back that high, but very happy to add it to my collection. So I'm going to put these back on the shelf because that's driving me crazy, and I'll take down a few more. So another glaring hole on the shelf behind me. For those of you that have been watching my channel for a while, I think you know what these final 3 books are going to be. I really tried doing more deep cuts. I did not want to put big expensive books on this list, especially books I know other people are going to pick for their top 10. But I couldn't get away from these books, guys. They might be my 3 favorite comic books. Not only are they certainly the most valuable, but they are 3 of the most personally significant ones to me. And I just couldn't do a list on the Bronze Age without putting these 3 up here. So first, we have this beauty. This is X-Men #101 from 1976, written by Chris Claremont, art by Dave Cockrum, and of course, this is the first appearance of Jean Grey as the Phoenix, emerging from the New York harbor, wielding the Phoenix Force for the first time in her new green costume. Fantastic cover. I love it. Obviously, it's very historic to X-Men comic books, part of the Chris Claremont run that I needed. But the interesting story behind this is I originally got this book at a comic book show, and it was graded a 6.5. But when I got it, I noticed that it looked like it had some room for improvement. I showed it to my friend Jeff at Comic Spa, someone who praises I sing all the time. He took one look at it. He's like, oh yeah, I can make that better. But for me, I felt really uncomfortable about cracking open a slab. So I needed a really good reason to do so. Well, that good reason manifested when Chris Claremont did a signing at CGC. I thought it'd be a great book for him to sign. I gave it to Jeff. I told him, take it. I don't want to see you crack it open. He did. He worked his magic. We resubmitted it, and you see right there, it came back as an 8. So he got a bump of, 3 grades out of it. Pretty amazing, guys. I speak so highly of him. Oh, and one more thing I want to add. He was actually mad that this was an 8. He thought it should have been an 8.5, and it is beautiful. I mean, it's really hard to see too many defects in this. So, beautiful looking book. I actually especially like the fact that the yellow signature label matches the yellow trade dress and sort of complements her costume as well. Just a beautiful looking book. Really happy to have it signed by my favorite writer of all time. Awesome comic book. Absolutely makes number 3 on my list. Next up, man, this one was almost number 1, but right now I'm going to just feel like putting it as number 2. We have this one right here. This is Giant Size X-Men number 1, a book that needs no introductions, really. 1975, first appearance of the new team. I mentioned it earlier when I was mentioning X-Men 94. First appearance of Colossus, Storm, Nightcrawler, Thunderbird, second full appearance of Wolverine. A very historic, significant book for X-Men stories. Probably the most expensive X-Men book after X-Men number 1. My favorite comic book of all time, one I've always wanted. It sort of fell into my lap early last year. Has also the custom label right there, which I love. Yeah, it's a 2.5, but guys, I'm just happy to own this book. I've talked about it many times in the past, so I'm not going to get into it too much. Absolutely number 2 on my list. And number 1 is a book I got a few months ago. Yep, and I can't get away from it, not only because it's probably the best book in my collection, but I think it's one of the best books in the entire Bronze Age. Here we go. The Incredible Hulk, number 181, first full appearance of Wolverine. Guys, yeah, I mean, this is one of the, holy grails of the Bronze Age. Fantastic book. I pulled this out of a neighbor's collection. I was helping him sort of price everything out and helping him sell it. Something I'm still working on, actually. Pretty much almost there. But for all of the help I was giving him, he sold this to me for a pretty fair price. I did have this one cleaned and pressed by Comic Spa, and I'm doing this video just in time because although I don't love slab books, despite what you just saw, I showed you a lot of slab books, this one is so valuable. I am going to submit this one to CGC very soon. I think it's probably in the neighborhood of like a 4.5, somewhere around there. I think Jeff thought it was a 5.0, but I don't really care, guys. It's a fantastic book to own in any grade, and this absolutely ends up being my number 1 book from the Bronze Age. So this is a little bit spooky holding all of these up. I'm going to be very, very careful. So that was my top 10 Bronze Age comics in my collection. And although I tried having more deep cuts like this Swamp Thing number 9, sometimes, guys, you just gotta pull out the big guns and show off the good stuff. Head on down in the comments and let me know which of my top 10 you like the best. And hey, if you wanna participate in this challenge, you don't need to be tagged. You can make your own video showing your top 10 Bronze Age books, and you can define that however you want. Just make sure you put hashtag 70s covers in the title or the description, and people will see it. That's it, guys. In the meantime, I hope you keep hunting for comic books in strange and unusual places. Add to that Bronze Age collection, guys. They are some of the best comics ever created. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.